Hey guys, welcome back. It's Jen, and today I'm going to teach you how to frost a cake. I've got a lot of great tips and tricks for you guys in this video, and I even show you how to work with difficult frosting. So first of all, here's the tools you're going to need if you want to take a quick screenshot of this. If you haven't baked the cake yet, here's a couple of my favorite recipes. And you've never baked a cake before, I recommend watching my How to Bake a Cake tutorial. And my frosting recipe is really easy to work with and super yummy. I like to frost my cakes straight out of the freezer because there's a lot less crumbs that way and the cakes are less likely to be sliding around. So first let's stack our cake layers. This is really important because this is a foundation, and if you have that good foundation, it's going to be a lot easier to frost your cake. So first you're going to want to put a little frosting on your cake board to act as a glue. So the rule of thumb is to put the smooth side down on the cake board for the first layer. For the middle layers, it doesn't matter what side is up or down, and then for the top layer, we want the smooth side up. So this is going to create some great edges at your cake board and also at the top of your cake. As far as frosting between the layers, really the only important thing to do here is keep it level. One way I like to do that is I like to pipe a border around the edge of each layer. Another really important step is after you do frost a layer to push your cake down and kind of twist it and get out all the air bubbles. So what we're going to do next after we stack it is we're doing a crumb coat. Just a thin layer of frosting all around the cake. Just make sure it has a good shape. You don't have to worry about the frosting being perfectly smooth. All right, and for the top, again, just keeping it level. Just be careful here on the top. People tend to have the middle dome up and then the edges be kind of thinner. So we want to make sure this is level, and actually we want to make sure if we have really thick edges, and I want them to overhang off the sides. It's really important we have lots of frosting to work with at those edges. Okay, so now we're just going to start putting frosting on the sides. Really the purpose of this is to fill in any gaps between the layers and just have a really thin crumb coat over the cake. So think of it as just putting it on and scraping it off, and really let the cake be your guide. You really just want to keep the shape you already have that the cake has made. So when you're done with the sides, you're going to have this edge sticking on the sides, on the top, and all you're going to do is take your angled spatula and you just put it level with your cake, and you kind of just fold it over onto the cake. So that's the crumb coat complete, so you can go ahead and put this in the refrigerator or freezer if you're impatient like me, and it will firm up so you can go ahead and do the next layer of frosting. So I like to start on the top, and I like to have the frosting overhang so we can have really good edges. A lot of people have trouble with doming in the center of the top of the cake, so just make sure that you're not putting more pressure by the base of the blade than the tip of the blade, and just check every once in a while and just make sure it's still flat. And we're not looking to perfect this right now, just get a nice shape. Okay, now I'm going to go to the sides, and I like to go up and down to just make sure that we get an even amount of frosting around the entire cake. And again, we're just looking to do a nice shape here, so just check every once in a while and make sure your cake is still going straight up and down. Okay, so now I'm going to grab my baker's blade and start smoothing this out on the sides. You can also use your 13-inch angled spatula if you prefer. With each stroke, you're going to gently place your blade at a 45-degree angle at the cake, and then slowly lift off the cake and follow through. Kind of like how you'd follow through on a golf swing. So the trick here is just to really pay attention to the position of your blade. This baker's blade actually stands up on its own, so if you want to try that, you can see that's what your baker's blade should look like, except for, it's at a 45-degree angle to your cake. So it should be touching the cake board, it should be touching the top and the bottom of your cake at the same time, and it should be straight up and down. If you're having trouble smoothing this, just play around with your angles and your pressure. You may want to dig into the cake a little more to get it smoother. You may want to have less of the blade dragging across the cake. And it's really important after every stroke that you scrape your blade into your frosting bowl to get the excess frosting off your blade. And keep checking and make sure your cake is still going straight up and down. Again, we're really working on the shape here. And also feel free to play around a little bit, see which tool works better, how to hold it. Everybody's different. Okay, so now it's time to fill in the holes. If they're deep, I fill them in. If they're really shallow holes, sometimes I just scrape the frosting around it to level it all off. But most of the time you'll be filling the hole. So before we move back to the top of the cake again, we just want to make sure our sides are the right shape, there's no holes, and it's smooth except for the blade lines. That we're going to finish in the end. Okay, now let's move to the top. I'm going to be using my 9-inch spatula, and basically you just hold the spatula level to the cake and you kind of like fold the excess frosting over. You might have a lot more frosting sticking up than I do, and that's totally fine. So the same rules apply to the top of the cake as the sides. So you're going to want to gently place your blade onto the cake at the beginning of the stroke, and at the end of the stroke you want to slowly lift up and follow through. So we really want to get a straight edge, not a rounded edge. So make sure you're not pushing into the edge. You're just putting your blade level to it and folding it over. To be clear, you're just folding over the excess frosting that's up over the edge. So here's a video clip of me using the 13-inch angled spatula on top of the cake, and also the baker's blade on top of the cake. Again, just play around with your pressure and your angles to figure out what works best for you. So then we're going to go ahead and fill in the holes on the top. So you'll probably end up pushing some frosting over the edge again, so then you're going to have to scrape the sides again. And you're going to do this dance where you scrape the sides and then the top and then the sides and the top, and that's normal. And you're going to want to scrape a lot lighter when you do this, so you don't feel like you're re-smoothing everything again. So you can just really lightly just scrape the excess off. Okay, so now on the top of the cake, all we have left again are just the lines from the blade. So we're going to do our once over for the completely finished product. So the trick to this is to warm your blade. So first we're going to start with the baker's blade on the side, or whatever tool you want for the side of the cake. And we're going to warm it under hot water to warm the blade, and then dry it completely. And then we're going to gently place the blade on the cake, and this time you will notice that it does not make a line because it like melts the butter, so it's super smooth. And because it's warm, you'll also notice at your follow through that you won't leave a line there either. And you just do this once around the whole cake. And you do the same thing to the top of your cake. And go over any lines you see, and they will just melt away. So that's it. We are done. Okay, now it's time to get real. If this is the first time you frosted a cake, it probably did not go this smoothly. No pun intended. I know it didn't for me when I first frosted a cake. So let's do some troubleshooting. So first of all, if you had trouble getting good edges or getting the appropriate amount of frosting over the entire cake, you should try using the icing tip. So you don't have to put this on so well. It's just getting an even amount is what this really does. Make sure you put the teeth side in of the tip, and that'll help it grab onto the cake. And make sure when you put it on afterwards to use your spatula and push it into the cake so it sticks to the cake well. And then when you get to the top here, I want you to go ahead and let it fold over the top. That'll give you a nice good edge. So if your frosting keeps ending up looking like this, and you've tried your different angles and pressure with your blade, then it's probably a problem with your frosting. So here's a list of possible problems with your frosting and their solutions. And careful with that hot blade technique I showed you. That's what could get the buttercream too warm. Sometimes it's just easier to hit the reset button, scrape your cake down to the crumb coat, re-chill it, redo your frosting, and magically you'll find it works out because you just didn't know what happened the first time around. So let's say you can't remake your frosting for some reason. You have to work with this difficult frosting. What you're going to do here is use that hot blade technique where you run your blade under hot water and dry it completely. I have smoothed out some pretty difficult frosting this way, but you have to be careful because if you do it too much or it's too warm, you could end up scraping the frosting completely off your cake and you end up seeing the cake underneath. So if this happens, just scrape down your cake to the crumb coat, chill it, let your buttercream come back to room temperature. And as soon as you start seeing this happen where you're scraping it off, change the temperature of your blade to not quite so hot. And you'll find the right temperature. And play around with your angles again. Sometimes I, put the most of the blade on the cake when I'm doing a hot blade technique. And if you haven't gotten that spin technique down on the top of the cake, that has smoothed some pretty difficult frosting. But you might have to upgrade your turntable if you don't have one that when you spin it, it kind of turns for a while by itself. So they don't have to be expensive. I got this one for $30 on Amazon, and it really works great. And if you're having trouble frosting the cake, don't let it get you down. A lot of it is muscle memory, kind of like when you learn to dribble a basketball and then one day you're just running down the court, not even thinking about it. That's what frosting a cake will become to you. And you don't have to have a smooth cake to decorate a cake. I have a lot of different techniques that are way easier than this. And you can use those techniques and you're still getting practice smoothing the cake, and then you cover it up, but one day you're going to realize, oh, I don't have to cover this up. I know how to do a smooth cake now. One of the easiest ways to frost a cake is a rustic cake. Another really cute cake is a sprinkle cake. You could cover your entire cake in sprinkles. All you need for that is a good shape. A horizontal texture cake is a lot easier than it looks. And then you can also always go with a semi-naked cake, which is a really popular look, and it's much easier. So go ahead and make that unicorn cake. You don't need a smooth cake to do that. You can just have a different base. I recommend trying my how to decorate your first cake tutorial because it's really easy techniques that still give you a lot of aesthetic reward. So thank you guys so much for watching. Great job. Now you've got your basics down and you can have some real fun. I have endless tutorials of super cute, beautiful cakes, and they range from easy to advanced. And again, I always try to find the easiest way to get the best reward. So thank you guys again so much for watching, and I can't wait to see you next time.